There's one thing we can't stand around these parts, and that is doomerism. If there's one thing I can't stand, it is that. We are all about hopium on my channel, pumping you up, making you feel good. And yes, in politics, there are often things that happen that don't make you feel good because, well, that's politics. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you've got to keep playing the game. And if you're not playing the game, well, why are you even in politics to begin with? And there is very, very much, I think, especially in the UK left, to be really, really, really doomerism about the potential future of the country. But that is not the case. There is always a case to have some serious, serious hopium. You know, we should be organizing campaigns. We should be organizing, protests, you name it. We need to get the left motivated. And that's what I want to do. And Phil is one of the biggest, lefty UK YouTubers. But I've really, really noticed in a lot of his content recently, and I think this video is sort of the peak of this. He's really, really taking the doomerism pill of not being, hopeful about it and looking forward and telling people about things we can do, solutions to lots of the problems that we have. But yeah, so we're going to go into this, and because I agree with some of Phil's comments, we're going to go here about again, of course, the rise in populism, not only here in the UK but around the world. I agree with some of his comments he's going to say, but some of them I very, very much disagree with. So we're going to go over his video on this, and hopefully we're going to give Phil a good old dose of hopium. But before we actually start, Phil, please get yourself a light. Please sort out your lighting. Honestly, it looks like if I opened a window, you would burst into flames. Get yourself over to Elgato. Get yourself a light. You can tell by me. This side's, that's where the light's pointing. This side's a bit darker because, again, that's not where the light's pointing. Because, again, I haven't set up my light properly today. So you're not the only one. But like I say, and I'm more than happy to give you any advice you might need on doing that because, well, that's what I do as a job. But anyway, onto your video. So yeah, we're going to go over again Phil's video about this. But before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and again, please do share it to Phil so that he sees it. And of course, the subscribe button down below if you are new to the channel. And of course, pardon me, there are links down below to my Patreon page and an donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And of course, the YouTube memberships are open down below as well. So let's go diving into this video then, shall we? So, or shall we keep it like this? I don't know, we'll keep it like this.
Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to look at how the tight contest for the French presidency also highlights some of the issues we've had in UK politics in recent years, possibly forever, but they've certainly become more acute in the past few years. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So it's all getting a bit squeaky bum time.
Don't really think it is. Like I say, Phil goes on to say, obviously, this seems to be very much a repeat of the last French presidential elections, and Le Pen got through to the second round, but was very, very soundly defeated. I believe it was like 66 to 32, 33, something like that. So she was very, very soundly defeated. So there is no reason to even suppose that the left, again, in France, and again, the other political groups, or we could just lump them all in together and say the French left, is absolutely going to motivate themselves once again to make sure that Le Pen doesn't get in. because quite frankly, we've seen again what happened in the UK with Brexit, what happens when you let crazy nutters in like Viktor Orban in France. You've seen obviously the craziness going on in Italy with their populist movements going on there, being able to sort stuff out. You've had Trump in America. So France very clearly knows that putting these people in really isn't going to solve too much of problems, despite the fact that Le Pen, again, will say on one hand, oh, we're going to have all this wonderful stuff. And then on the other hand, well, some very, very anti-immigrant rhetoric. let's, and that's keeping it very, very polite, to say the least. You can say a lot worse, but of course it's YouTube, keeping it a bit PG, shall we say?
Is potentially quite foolish because at the time of recording this, we've not actually seen the results of the first runoff for the French presidential elections,
and it's Macron, Le Pen.
But it seems to be overwhelmingly the case that what we're doing is setting ourselves up for a second round in a couple of weeks between Macron and Le Pen. So I'm going to say that's what's happened. If it hasn't, I'm just going to look stupid. But yet again, the French people,
and that has happened, by the way. So it is Macron, Le Pen.
People, that's assuming that's what's happening, have got a choice between a far right nutter and someone else. The someone.
Let's not say it's a far right nutter and someone else. It's someone who's a centrist. Now, you can say that maybe Macron is probably maybe a bit right-centric, but ultimately he's a centrist. So let's at least be fair on that.
Someone else this time is a centrist who has already been in post. Now, sometimes it's someone on the left and sometimes it's someone on the right. Why does it always have to be a runoff with someone on the far right? I'm sure very clever people who are good at thinking and stroking their chins will have deep and meaningful answers, but I'm just going to wax lyrical on how I see a few things. See,
so before obviously he gets to that, do my own chin stroking. As we said earlier in the video, this is unfortunately the far right rise in popularism that we've seen, and Le Pen very much modeling after all the far right parties, not only in France but around the world, know that they can't get in with their crazy rhetoric anymore. Just look at the kind of stuff that her father used to say before she took over, and again tried to sort of clean up the image. It's exactly what Nigel Farage did, and it's proved to be pretty successful. You say this is a problem on one hand, but then it's a wink wink nudge nudge in the other direction for all your true supporters, because they really know who the problem people are to sort all this out, type of thing.
My own fear is that we're seeing a carefully coordinated rise of populism around the world, because we're seeing it in so many countries. It's not
really coordinated. It's more a response really to the 2008 financial crisis, which again has spiraled on into, well, it's late stage capitalism. That's really the problem that we're seeing around, not only just here in the West, but around the world.
Like, this is caused by this one thing, because then it would be contained where that one thing was happening. It seems to be everywhere. I've said in the past, when you looked at the people involved in both Brexit and the election of Trump in 2016, you went, there's a lot of crossover here. There's a lot of people that were involved in both. What's going on? A lot of international players involved.
Yep, because they saw obviously the rise of Trump as a model to which they could all use to replicate themselves around around the globe on those fronts. So I want to get the right earpiece. Oh, that's not even the right one. I don't know it is. There we go. Anyway, pardon me for that.
In both campaigns, and we also know that quite a lot of them are also involving themselves in other countries in Europe as well. Steve Bannon has attempted to spread his tentacles into other EU countries after he caused the UK to fall and the US to suffer serious damage. And although Brexit ironically forced the far right in Europe to scale back their anti-EU rhetoric a bit,
Yeah, it wasn't just a bit. Le Pen has dropped the whole idea of having a Brexit independence referendum.
Clever ones did not lose much popularity. They just adapted their rhetoric for the new reality. Make no mistake, though, they're the same people with the same ideology. They'll come to the same political conclusions. And that ideology is not in the interests of the common good. It never is. And it never has been in history. Never. Like Farage and Johnson in the UK and Trump in the US, Le Pen pretends to be on the side of the people. But in reality,
that's fascism. that's what it does. You know, this goes all the way back to obviously, you know, if you know anything about fascism, it tries to get as much mass appeal as it possibly can, and will even ape popular ideas from the left if it thinks it will get it into power.
Grifter with a warped hatred of her common man, but she can't possibly win, can she? I mean, moderates in France will surely vote for Macron, and the left.
It's not just moderates; it is the left as well, and we saw that last time that France resoundingly rejected Le Pen last time. And there's no reason to suggest that that will not happen this time.
Left can't possibly want Le Pen as their president, even though they'll not be impressed with Macron either. But herein lies the problem, and it's a problem that has blighted UK politics as well. See, for all the talk of how archaic the UK electoral system is and how the rest of Europe, Belarus aside, has a much more modern take on things, there are still the same issues here and there. The French presidency is one of them. The fundamental problem with
but it's not just the French presidency as well. They have an upper and lower house as well, and people really don't talk about what goes on in there, because unless you really follow French politics, and again, I don't follow French politics, but at least I know that there is those obviously two other separate institutions, and while the president does have power, those two other institutions aren't flooded with Le Pen supporters either. So ultimately, even if Le Pen did get in, there are systems to stop her, shall we say, exercising some, you know, the type of stuff that she wants to do. And trust me, if you've ever looked at France and how politically active like the people in France really are, they will not let Le Pen get a single thing done. They will not let her get a single thing done at all. This is why that even if she does get in, there is such a good case for her being a complete lame duck during her presidency if she even manages to just scrape in.
First past the post is that you get a false choice. In the UK, for example, you will often see half a dozen candidates or more on a ballot for a general election.
Not really a false choice, Phil. I disagree with your take on this, calling it a false choice. That's how our system works. It is entirely possible to go into a conservative area or even a Labour area and campaign hard in that seat and win it. We've seen this happen in by-elections very recently from the Conservatives, where the Lib Dems have come in and taken a seat. It's not impossible to provide it. You just have to really put the work in to be able to do it. And don't get me wrong, without a big party or a big backer behind you, it is very hard to do, but it's not exactly impossible. So I 100% disagree that it's a false choice.
In reality, it doesn't matter.
Not a false choice. It's an illusion of choice. Sorry, let's get that right.
How many candidates there are? You have a choice of two. Now, I'm not going to swear that there is no constituency.
You never really have a choice of two. You never ever really have a choice of two. I want to make that clear, because there are independents. There are always independents. You know, there's a Yorkshire Party. There's, you know, Reclaim. There's Volt. There are tons of different parties out there. But again, because of how our system is, you've got to obviously win a particular seat, which again will get you your MP, and then of course it's how many of those MPs you get, which of course gives you power. And of course, the way our system is set out, you have to really concentrate on those particular areas. That's why you need big parties with, again, big backing, which again is as a prime example to drive not only just for election reform, but how parties themselves are funded too. So
in the UK where there isn't a three-way race sometimes, because if I did, someone will point it out to me. But I am going to say in at least 99.
And let me point it out to you, Phil. There are lots of swing seats in the UK. Not only just swinging between, obviously, Peterborough. Peterborough is a perfect example, exactly of a swing seat. It's gone to Labour, Lib Dems, Conservatives. It's never really been. It very, very rarely has ever had in the past more than a two-term incumbent. But again, that's pretty much always has been a three-way race. I know you said pointing it out to you, but yeah. But again, if a new party comes up and they did the groundwork, they could get in. Bear in mind, this has long been, of course, the dream of the Green Party, having very, very good success at local elections, but never really being able to get that momentum into a national election and win on a national stage. They've never had, obviously, more than one MP in Caroline Lucas.
9% of seats, I'm going to confidently say it is a choice of two candidates. And if you do not like either of the candidates or the parties and the policies they represent, then you are left to choose the lesser of the two evils.
This is where, again, you must campaign, because even if you, again, I will say this now, I'm a member of the Labour Party. Don't really like Starmer. I think he does a good job, really. I think Corbyn was better with policies, but overwhelmingly, we're starting to see more stuff come out from Labour. I think Ed Miliband, you will get to Ed Miliband later in a bit, has been doing some fantastic stuff campaigning for Labour, putting forward the policies that Labour would do if they got into power. So it's really, really it's a really good and interesting time to see this way it goes. But obviously, if you are in the party, like I am, you can then say, hey, Labour, we should probably be looking at this. Writing to your MPs. I'm a massive advocate of writing to your MP. I'm a massive advocate of campaigning, getting stuff put on the Labour manifesto is what we need to do in the left. We can push Starmer to be better. That is what we are here to do. We are here to push the party to be better. And there's a lot of people who just seem to think that that's just impossible. It's not impossible at all. This is where the doomerism starts to come in, and we are against doomerism 110%.
But that is not how most people think. They will either vote for their preferred choice, even if it means helping their worst choice, or they will not vote at all and blame the better candidate for not appealing to them personally.
So we saw this, obviously, in the 2019 general election. There was no organised campaign. You saw the whole thing of, well, vote tactically, and if you vote Lib Dem, then we'll end up with a hung parliament. It'll all be roses and chocolate, but that didn't happen. The campaign to do this was completely uncoordinated. You saw the Red Wall Conservatives get in with some very slim majorities, and you saw the Lib Dem numbers shockingly increase, which again we saw where the Labour vote was going. But also, again, in the 2019 election, it wasn't just about Brexit. It was also the idea of who would be the better prime minister. And of course, that goes into another huge conversation, which again, we're not going to have because it could be the rest of the entire video, about who the British public thought would be a better prime minister, Jeremy Corbyn or Boris Johnson. And unfortunately, because Jeremy Corbyn did not play the PR game or the media game, he allowed the essentially the right-wing press to run amok and convince even staunch Labour supporters that they themselves could never ever trust Jeremy Corbyn, and thus you got the nose holding for them, and lots of people voting for the very first time for Boris Johnson and Conservatives. But again, that's what the right does, and does it unfortunately effectively far better than the left has for quite some time.
The end result is, because many people will refuse to vote for the clearly better candidate, they risk getting the worst. If Le Pen wins on April the 24th, it won't really be because France has lost its mind and bought into the xenophobic fears that her party pushes, much like with Brexit in the UK. It will be because reasonable people sulked because they didn't feel represented by either choice.
And that is true. But even then, in this choice, the danger is, of course, of Le Pen. She is a fascist. She's no more different than someone like Viktor Orban or Putin. I see you've got the picture up in the background, and then obviously the quote from Le Pen. She said she wanted a closer political alliance with Putin. She's praised Orban for some of the stuff he's done in Hungary, and Orban has literally slid Hungary into autocracy and potentially a dictatorship ruled by him. There is no opposition press or anything like that because Orban just goes gone and he just doesn't appear anymore. But the danger is there, and people will realize that. That's what happened last time this happened, and I very much believe that is what is going to happen again. The people of France are far more politically savvy, far more politically turned on than we are in the UK. They will rally around Macron. Even if they don't like Macron, it's either you have Macron or you have a fascist. And at the end of the day, people of France do not want a fascist. And even if she does manage to squeak in, she will be a complete lame duck. Like I say, the French political activism machine will kick in, and she will not be able to do a single goddamn thing.
You see it all the time in the UK, and it's the main fear ahead of the next general election as well. It's also more likely to happen in the UK because, again, this first past the post giving the illusion of choice.
Again, it's not an illusion of choice. That is just our political system. That is the game that we have to play in. And of course, if you want to talk about, demoralizing people, seriously, the UK left does a fantastic job by itself demoralizing its own voting bloc. I've said this time and time again. The UK left is absolutely awful for this. It demoralizes itself. It gets people out not to vote, and then pats itself on the back for losing. And that is not the attitude we should be taking. We should be taking the attitude of, okay, we need to win. The biggest voting bloc, time and time again, for people in the UK is the people who do not vote. And you need to mobilize people to go out and vote, because even the government very recently said in the new election bill, a couple of lords actually came out and actually said in the House of Lords just this week, that the UK government has done a very, very poor job in motivating people to go out to vote, or even getting people to sign up to vote. And of course, that works obviously perfectly for the Conservatives. But here's the thing: there's people that don't go out and vote Labour. And we've got to mobilize those people, because it is a massive chunk of people. And then you've got to go into campaigning mode and how that works. So you've got to go out and talk about Labour policies, about what Labour is going to do, why this is going to be good for not only the town, but for the UK as well. Like I say, there's always that balance between local politics and national politics that we've seen come into play very, very recently. A huge push for localism. Again, although it's green screened, again, go buy this book. I highly recommend it. Paint Your Town Red. how Labour is transforming local communities, local action by community wealth building. Go out and buy it. I always recommend it. Absolutely fantastic. People will know, oh my God, he's just shown the book, because I had to go out and buy another copy. And then I found my other copy just as I bought my new copy, and I'm like, but anyway, that's another story. But yeah, we have to have this hopium. We have to get people motivated to go out and vote, and this includes going out and tackling people and saying voting for the Conservatives is bad because of XYZ, because of what they've done. Your life and your community will be improved by voting for Labour because, again, of the policies, as we've said, like community wealth building, the whole idea of localism that is coming into sort of the Labour movement is fantastic. You know, the Green New Deal that Ed Miliband has said, and the decarbonisation of the steel industry, the pushing, of course, for the infrastructure projects, and the northern leg, of course, of the eastern leg of the HS2. Again, all this stuff that we can talk about, and yet so few people on the left don't really talk about it or engage with it, because they've just turned off, because they've been told by people on the left that Keir Starmer's bad, and that's it. Again, that's doomerism in a nutshell, and that is the left doing it to itself, which at the next general election, if Labour loses, it will pat itself on the back and go, oh, if only you would listen to us. Only that's not the attitude you need to take. You need to take the attitude of, we are going to go into this next general election, we are going to win, and we are going to give Boris a massive boot up the ass. Not just Boris, but whoever potentially might take over, because it might not even be Boris fronting the Conservatives at the next general election. So we've got to take that hope to the people. And like I say, Phil is one of the biggest UK YouTubers, and to see him, well, engage in doomerism ain't good. It ain't good at all.
Right, come the second round in France, voters are clearly going to have two choices. There's no illusion there. They know that. It's two choices. There's no mirage.
But why is it not an illusion in France, but it is in the UK? Just something to point out.
Of candidates to vote for in the second round as there was in the first. As the date of the election draws near, they will know with certainty the winner will either be Macron or Le Pen. If they don't vote at all, they know that they're basically helping Le Pen. In the UK, it's actually worse, because there's no like first round where you throw your votes away on no hopers just for a laugh. Then you go to a second round between the two serious candidates. The illusion of choice is maintained.
Again, I completely disagree that is an illusion of choice. There are a myriad of different parties out there. You just have to work really, really hard to get those people in, but it's not impossible. And again, of course, the Conservatives, Labour, and Lib Dems tend to win because of they've got massive backing. Of course, due to your theory, as you were saying, that the SNP should have no MPs, because after all, they are quite a far smaller party than the Labour, the Conservatives, or even the Lib Dems. But it is possible that they can do it. They've very much focused on certain areas and slowly built out from it. But it is possible to do. And saying that people, oh, it's just an illusion of choice, it doesn't matter where your vote is, that to me, you are encouraging people not to vote, and that is dangerous.
I remember a few years ago when it was Jean-Marie Le Pen, wasn't it, who looked close. Again, this was against Chirac all those years ago. And obviously the left in France would never want someone like Chirac in office again. Oh, you can't vote for him a second term.
Every single time this has happened, where not only Marie Le Pen, but her father came up to vote, the French people resoundingly rejected them and got out and got motivated and got out to vote. There is no reason to suggest that this will not happen this time. And like I say, even if Le Pen does manage to squeak through, the French political activism, the actors, the enthusiasm that the French people have for their politics, which again doesn't exist in the UK. I really wish it did, because we wouldn't be in this situation. And if we were in this situation, we'd be out non-stop, campaigning, protesting, writing to, coordinated letter writing campaigns, all this type of stuff that the left in the UK should be doing, but doesn't. And it infuriates me to no end.
It would feel terrible to do that. But the slogans from some on the left were, vote for the crook, not the Nazi. In other words, we have to actually say, yeah, we don't like Chirac, but do you know what? There is worse. And that worse is on offer. And
considering how bad that Jacques Chirac-Le Pen election was, considering the fact that his time, Marine Le Pen and Macron, it seems to be that Macron is a far, far better position than at least Jacques Chirac was.
Crook won. It was a relief that a man like Chirac won. That's how bad politics can be sometimes. But
it's not that that's how bad politics is. It's how bad politics can get sometimes, because there is a lack of engagement, there is a lack of push to get people involved in politics. There is very much a resistance to getting involved. And again, even running for like a local council seat is almost a military operation. Like I say, I've said I'm a Labour member. I'm involved very much in sort of local elections going on. There's a by-election happening potentially next door in Wakefield, which I'm definitely going to get involved with. And by the way, all the indications that we are seeing is Labour is going to win. We win. I can't even say it. We win that seat. So is Labour really that bad when we're on course to win that? No, it's not. There are some really, really good Labour policies out there that need to, I think, be talked about more about.
Here's the thing: if you don't face up to that, if you idealize politics and what it might be, you stick your head in the sand, you delude yourself, you blame those. Well, this better candidate should be more like this, or they should adopt.
You mean doomerism, which I think what you've been, engaged in most of this video.
This policy or that policy, I don't like the fact they're not talking about this. Then you will get a whole lot worse. In the UK,
and again, that's why we need to sort of campaign and take this to it. You can change Labour policy by being a member of the Labour Party, by being engaged in your local party and getting them to pass, resolutions to kick up to the party. But it's not just that; it's a whole organised campaign. The campaign for electoral reform to get PR in Labour at the moment was laughed at. They said you'll never get more than 80 parties or local CLPs to sign up to it. We are now up to, I think, 300 and something. I think it's 312 local Labour parties have signed this. There's clearly a need and a want from the local Labour grassroots to change the electoral system. Now, at the moment, obviously, that's been resisted by the top, but they can't resist this push forever. And of course, at the last Labour National Convention, we did see the motion unfortunately get defeated by the trade unions. But immediately after, the trade unions went back to their national conference, and a lot of them said, why did you vote against it? And have now passed motions for them to vote for it the next time it comes up at the next Labour national convention, decide what goes in the next manifesto, what needs to be on the stand. So I'm very hopeful we are going to get that in the UK. But even if we do change our electoral system to a PR system, the things you were talking about here still would exist. You'll get people not go out and vote. You might get people splitting the vote, voting for different parties. Just because the grass looks greener on the other side doesn't necessarily mean that it is indeed greener.
Hey, as far as millions of people were concerned in 2019, they were offered two bad choices. The hope is that they don't feel this way come the next election, that they feel, say, Labour offers, even if not a choice that really inspires them, because I really don't think that's on the cards.
I completely disagree. I think you are seeing some really good stuff come out from Labour. I think the whole idea of the green policy stuff is really good. Now, if you're saying it's not inspiring you, why is it not inspiring you? I'd have a look at it again. Take a look at the policies that have been talked about pushing it forward. The fact that Labour is the only party at the moment that has said it will tackle 0-hour contracts. It wants to get rid of them. Labour very recently put forward the whole thing about that happened with P&O. Just a couple of weeks ago, they pushed to ban firing and rehiring. Labour have said they're going to tackle that. So clear that is an issue to hundreds of thousands of people in the UK to help protect their sort of workers' rights and improve upon them. How is that not inspiring? Now, maybe of course you need to change the language and how it's communicated. And I think that really gets to the key point here, is that language and of communication, of getting it across to people. And I heavily say to my MP all the time, he needs to start doing live streams and interacting with people on there, explaining what he's been doing in Parliament this week, what bills and all this type of stuff. And it's my hope that he will eventually. But again, and you can roll it out to most MPs as well. But of course, they are sort of busy people. But again, we're getting off topic now. But yeah, there is stuff that we can do to get it. And again, you are sort of a key answer here, Phil. You are one of, again, the biggest lefty political voices here in the UK, and you can advocate for some of these Labour policies, and you can tell the people why you think these policies are really good and why at the next general election you should be voting for Labour.
At least one that ends the nightmare of Conservative pay. That is my best hope, because I think back to Ed Miliband. He lost the election for Labour in 2015. At the time, the Conservatives were delivering huge economic pain to the country through their austerity programme.
And I just want to point out this, because we'll get to Ed Miliband. I've seen Ed Miliband, like Phil, go from being obviously the guy who lost in 2015 to someone who is completely different. Like someone who is absolutely 100% completely different. He is not the same person as he was in 2015. In fact, I've said this before. If he ever ran again, I think he would. I think he would give the Conservatives a really good goddamn run for their money. Almost certainly, he is massively upped his game of what he used to, of what he was. Even saying in one interview, he wished he'd been far more willing to push some of the ideas that he had even further. And again, he is leading the charge on the green industrial revolution on this. He's Labour's man on this, and he has been doing some fantastic stuff on this. So, like I say, Ed Miliband is not the same guy he was back in 2015.
But the Conservatives were still blaming it on the previous Labour government. Oh, we're only hurting you because of Labour. It was their fault. Sorry, we have to do this, but it's quite necessary. They still do this now years later.
Again, that was the 2008 financial crisis. Again, nothing to do with Labour, but the Conservatives decided that they were going to take it out on the Labour and used it as an advantage for this. I've just realised how we're almost at 39 minutes. Going long on this one.
But it will fool fewer and fewer people as time goes on. In 2015, some people thought, well, I suppose if they accept that Labour made a mess of it, which was not true, but never mind. But if you have that in your head, you might think, well, maybe 5 years isn't quite enough. And they do say it's nearly there. They talk about these green shoots of recovery. So in a couple more years, it'll probably be fine. And then
again, the key point really was that Labour really, really needed to get their message across, and they really didn't. It's been a systematic failing of them again since they've been out of power. They've been really unable to get across what it was, and obviously at the end of their, shall we say, their tenure before the coalition, they really had sort of run out of steam to push that through. But the Labour and the Labour Party in England has changed completely, and I think they are in a far more better position to win now than they ever have been in the past couple of years, and that is coming from someone who is a Jeremy Corbyn supporter.
It wasn't, and then it still isn't, and it won't be in 2024. But as time goes on, fewer and fewer people are fooled. I mean, how daft would you have to be come a likely 2024 election to believe that the problems are actually the fault of the party that hasn't been in power for over 14 years? I don't think Starmer will be a better campaigner than Miliband.
Miliband is a far more better campaigner now than he was back in 2015. I think I've said this before. I think he was probably the greatest prime minister we've never had, potentially. So I'm willing to put that idea forward. But Starmer really needs to get some energy in and about him. I think I do worry about that, of course, on that front. Him being sort of a good campaigner. Yeah, he can give a good speech, but can he give a really good, tub thumping speech? That's what we really need, especially during a general election campaign.
May not even be as good. Miliband was just a leader too soon after Labour's defeat, and he wasn't a great campaigner himself. If he were, he probably would have won, but he wasn't.
And like I say, changed completely since then. Absolutely. Done a completely 180 to what it was in 2015.
The main asset we've got in the UK now is that the Conservatives have been in power for a long time, 12 years now, and it will be 14 before there's an election, and we are still to see any benefits, and we won't see any benefits. Life actually just gets worse. France has a bit of a problem in this regard. It doesn't have that asset. That works against it because Macron is the incumbent. He's not going to attract support from people who just want the current government going, oh, we gave him a chance and it all went to shit, so we'll give the new person a chance. Because the problem is that Macron is the current.
Again, there is a Senate, a two-tier House system in France. They have done stuff. I mean, again, Macron's obviously agenda again wasn't exactly anything I would vote for myself. But even now, back in 2017, or even now, I'd be voting for Macron at the next election, because last thing I want is Marie Le Pen in. It's the last thing I want, and I have a huge belief that the French left are going to galvanize, and they are going to mobilize not only them, but the centrists as well to go. But this also should be a massive opportunity, because the French left can now go, hey, Macron, you need to be better. I think, hopefully, that will be the message that they need to take to Macron as well. We are going to vote for you this time as well, but you need to be better. And Macron can be better. He could even maybe ape some of Le Pen's stuff, saying, "Oh, we're going to sort of renationalize, bring stuff back into sort of more public ownership rather than privatize stuff. Just park your tank right on her lefty lawn." There's a ton of stuff Macron could actually do to appeal again more to the left, and more stuff that would appeal to a lot more people. He just needs to do it. And of course, the left can do it. Looking what happened in Canada with the NDP supporting and propping up Trudeau. They've said, hey, we want this agenda, and they've had to compromise on some of the stuff, but hey, that's politics. You have to compromise. But they are getting a ton of stuff that has been on their agenda for so long, and it's proper progressive policies. I would definitely recommend you sort of go and look into that.
Government. Le Pen can't be blamed for any government policies that voters feel are not in their interest. She's also promising to form a diverse government of national unity. be bollocks, of course. But in opposition, populists are especially dangerous because they can promise all the wonderful things and people are more likely to believe them. It's much harder to counter. Like when populists promise shiny things in government, as they have been doing in this country for a while, you can try and point out...
That's populism, Phil. That is populism in a nutshell. That's what they do. So you have to push back and you have to offer your own, shiny baubles as well, but you will then actually have to deliver on those promises. We've seen populists before get into power throughout Europe and not being able to deliver on those promises. Just look at Bolsonaro in Brazil. He promised all this, fantastic change and all this stuff would happen. Hasn't even delivered anything on that.
Yeah, but look at what they've actually delivered. And people may still say, yeah, I know, but they say it takes time. Whereas in opposition, you can't even say, well, look at what they've delivered, because they've delivered nothing. They haven't had the chance. So someone will go, I'll give them a go. That's what they'll say, give them a go. Could it really be worse than what we've got now? We had people...
Yes, it can be worse than what you've got now, especially when your choice is Macron, the centrist, neoliberal, versus Le Pen, the far right fascist. That's your choice.
We'll say that about the Tories in 2010. Austerity killed tens of thousands of people and plunged millions more into poverty. People said it in the 2016 Brexit referendum. We've had a lot more killed since and a lot more.
And why did that not work? Because I know this is a lefty talking point, but you never see this brought up in national newspapers very often or on TV. Why hasn't that sunk in to the British public? Because the messaging was just not good enough. And I know you're going to say, oh, well, but shouldn't that be enough to say? No. You have to find a way to tell this story of how the Conservatives have been such an omnishambles that they've allowed tens of thousands of people to die and languish in poverty. And we saw that at the last Labour conference, that Starmer did try and sort of do that. You can obviously question his success on that. But that's what you have to do. And unfortunately, he's up against Boris Johnson, a master storyteller. Boris can spin, gold from corn, essentially. And that's been his biggest advantage. Why the reason, no matter how many terrible, awful things he does, and he will get away with it because he has that ability. And you've got to find a way and a story that beats and trumps Boris's. Because when you can do that, you can win every single time. So long as you can tell that good story, that is how it's done. And again, I will say this now, Labour, the Lib Dems, have a massive problem in being able to tell people like what their policies are and how they will better their lives and what they will do to improve the country. That's the problem. We've seen time and time again.
Plunged into poverty. For those who say in France over the next couple of weeks, the outcome will not be any better in France than it was in the UK. In fact, my greatest fear come election time is people thinking, let's give them a go. It couldn't actually be any worse, could it? The only time it can't actually be any worse is when you've already got the worst in power. But I have seen the attitude in the UK. And although there are significant culture...
Again, doomerism. He's doomerism. And it's fortunately coming from the left, which massively encourages whole swathes of people not to vote. Like I say, local elections, perfect example. The left should be organising to give Boris an absolutely bloody nose come local election time. 30% or even less in some places actually go out to vote in local elections. It does not take a lot of mobilization to be able to mobilize your own support and to even win in some places. This is why you see independents win all the time in up and down places all around the country, because they go out and they mobilize their local people, their local populace to vote for, again, local issues, and they win. But yeah, it just takes it just takes that mobilization, that belief, and that carrying forward of the message of this is Labour, this is who we are, this is how we are going to help make your life better and improve the lives of the citizens of this country. That is what the message needs to be taken forward with.
Cultural differences between Britain and France.
Cultural differences, by the way, want to touch on that. France, far, far, far more politically active. That's what I've been saying throughout this entire video. Even if Le Pen manages to squeak in somehow, you are going to see protests, all kind of stuff happen, and she will be a complete lame duck.
You know, people are people. You know, I mean, like one of the big differences I've talked about with Brexit, like some of the things that the UK government do, you won't get away with it in France. The people would rise up. That revolutionary, history, which means that they don't take any shit from the governments. But sometimes I think that can make them more susceptible to making good the enemy of the great.
And why did it's worth pointing out why did that happen? It was because Leave spun a far better story than the Remain campaign. Leave spun a story of a Britain that had been held back and diminished by its membership of the EU. And it promised everything to everyone. You know, it ran the whole gambit of we're going to, it was the Leave campaign was we're going to leave the EU politically, but we're going to stay in the single market and customs union. Who's really breaking the will of the people at that point?
Right. You look at the government and you go, if you were to look at it in passion, you go, well, is Macron better than Le Pen? Yes. So should we vote for Macron? Well, I don't know. He could be better, and he should be better. Things should be better now. There's no reason for him to have done that or not to have done this. So no.
Yeah. And how do you make politicians be better? Campaign, activism. That's how you do it. And, I'd say to any, French lefty watching, just because you're going to potentially have Macron for another, couple of years, doesn't mean you shouldn't actively try and campaign and say, hey, look, we've got this issue. We think this policy would be really good. What do you think? It's the same thing in the UK as well, which again, sort of we need to get Labour to start to alter their platform to put some more progressive stuff on their ticket. I mean, they've got plenty of stuff already with the Green New Deal, which is fantastic, but there needs to be more stuff.
Why should I give him my vote? That can be the attitude. But people are people. Voter apathy is not the consequences of decent politicians trying to piss off the electorate. It's the tool of the extreme right wing. They know that their support will go out and vote. They know that.
Yes, because unfortunately, people on the left doomerism people into each other. Some of the stuff that I take issue with you saying about, obviously, the illusion of choice is the exact type of stuff that demotivates people on the left to go out and vote. Why should I go out and vote after all? Isn't it an illusion of choice? You need to be motivating people to go out and vote, not demotivating them.
The extreme right wing are really, really good at firing up their support base and making them think that every election is an existential crisis. So they'll all go out. They've got wealthy backers.
It's not just them having wealthy backers. It's that they can motivate their base. Something which the left does very, very poorly here in the UK. Very poorly.
Much of the media normalising their nonsense. Their support will turn up and vote. But they also know that their support are nowhere near a majority of the electorate. Nowhere near. They can't win based on that alone. So to win, they absolutely depend on lots and lots of moderate people not turning out to vote at all.
Yep. So the left needs to reach out to moderate people as well. Every single time, and I'll bring this up, whenever you look at how people align themselves, it's 25% on the left, a massive 33% in the middle being centrist, and then 25% on the right. So neither left or the right can win without that centrist support here in the UK. You need to appeal to the centrists, like it or not. That's the game that we have to play. And even after of course, if we do change our voting system to a proportional representation one, left parties will find themselves having to ally with centrist parties. Because again, if you take that vote in, the largest party would be a centrist party, and then you'd have the right wing saying, let's ally with you and do some deals like you see in all these other governments that have proportional representation. They do deals to get them into power, to get their agenda done. My biggest fear was that if that happened, the left would never do deals with centrist party to get into power, to get stuff done, and even compromise. Again, I think is a very unused word in the left political lexicon here in the UK, but that's what we need to think about. And again, that's obviously down the line when we get PR in. But in the moment, we are having to deal with first past the post. That is the political system we have to play by. So let's play by it and do some good. And Labour, bear in mind, is a big tent lefty party. It's got centrists all the way down to, your socialists. Sometimes, the socialists aren't going to get everything that they want. But then that's politics. You have to compromise. You have to be pragmatic about what you want to get done and how much stuff you want to get done. I've said this before. I would rather have a political platform by Keir Starmer that does about 50% or maybe even 30% of what I want, because I know that a full agenda of everything that I would want 100% never really going to pass in the current Labour Party, because again, it's such a big tent of all the different political spectrums of left that we have and centrists on the party. You have to compromise. And I think that should certainly be the lesson, of course, during the Corbyn years that the left hadn't learned. But that's another conversation for another time.
So they need to stop the majority rallying around their opponents as the better of the two options. In Britain, this is achieved much more easily because, again, we have that illusion of choice going on.
Again, I completely disagree with you. An illusion of choice here in the UK. That's such doomerism language. That's what I just talked about demotivating people not to vote. If you think about this, you've got such a big UK audience, Phil. People are watching this now thinking, well, Phil's just said it's an illusion of choice. Why should I go out and vote? It's an illusion of choice. That's an incredibly dangerous message I find that you are putting out here, Phil. An incredibly dangerous one.
France, with the presidential election, it will be because people refuse to vote for Macron because he wasn't good enough first time round. And obviously, no one's going to suggest he'll suddenly change and be better in the second term. Yeah, he may be more experienced, but fundamentally, his politics are his politics. And if you don't like them, he's not going to change his. But I do wonder how many who stay away consciously think do they entertain the thought that if Le Pen wins, as they decide not to go, do they think to themselves, if Le Pen wins, it's because I couldn't hold my nose to vote for the only candidate who didn't want to destroy the country? Because that's how I often see these things. That's how I often view these binary choices, because most of them are.
You shouldn't be viewing it. You really shouldn't be viewing it as a binary choice. And I know, of course, it's really a lesser of two evils argument here. So it sort of is. But when it comes to politics, there's more at play. There really is more at play than that. Like I say, you have Labour MPs who are socialists. You have Labour MPs who are like Soc Dems. You have Labour MPs who are like lefties or progressives or, centre left. Sometimes you've got to vote your candidate in, and then those candidates can then help to push the party for like progressive policies or things like that. That's how our system works. And again, the people on the left really do not seem to want to play by those rules. They would rather just go, I want things done now and fast. Unfortunately, that's not how the game is played. But those are the rules currently, at least, anyway. And like I say, I'm with you. I certainly do want some electoral reform and changing over to like a PR system, mainly based on like single transferable votes. I think that will be the best system for us. So yeah, I do hope that we do go in that direction.
Are binary. when you don't have proportional. Obviously, you can't have proportional representative French presidency. I understand that is a binary choice. That's how it has to be. But it can often be between the candidate who wants to destroy your country deliberately and the one who might do it accidentally.
And again, you always vote for, again, in that case, it's the lesser of two evils. Always. If you were, what, Trump and Hillary, I'd have voted Hillary. In this, in this election or any the past election, I would have voted Macron. You've seen in Hungary where you had the entire left band together to create all these different parties coming together to create an anti-Orban alliance to sort of get him out. An incredibly good thing, but unfortunately they failed. You look in Canada, where you look at the NDP saying we are going to prop you up, Trudeau, but here's the list of stuff that we want to get done. And it was a lot of really, really progressive stuff. Now they've had to compromise on one of the things by making it, means tested. I think it was the dental stuff or something like that. I think they said that they wanted. But ultimately, Trudeau is now going to have to pass sort of a lot more progressive agendas and progressive policies because he has the NDP backing him up on this. There's nothing to say that the French left or the left parties could again get Macron to say, look, we understand about this policy, but maybe we can compromise, maybe we can negotiate to how to create a really good policy that satisfies your politics and satisfies us, which makes sure that the next general election, Le Pen doesn't even get past the first round.
It's an awful choice, but I am pragmatic. I will always vote for the one who might do it accidentally. I will vote for someone who might accidentally damage my country because it still gives you your best chance. It's two poor options, but it's still your best chance. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours.
And I sort of disagree. It shouldn't be your best chance. There's always more. There's always more that you can do to influence politics. Get involved, do some stuff. And oh wow, just realized this is now an hour. I thought this was only going to be a short one, but no, we've gone on. So yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, I find what Phil has had to say here worrying. I completely disagree that it is an illusion of choice just to vote, for these parties. I completely disagree with him on that front. There is so much stuff you can be doing right now. For example, how many of Phil's audience are going out preparing for the May local elections to defeat the Tories, as I said earlier? Why aren't the left or a group of people going together to say, let's beat the Conservatives? We've just had, I think it was in Guildford, a very staunch Conservative area. The Lib Dems took all the local council, I think what 4 of the defended council seats from the Tories. That's good signs for what we've said at a next potential general election of the Lib Dems going forward and just taking a load of stuff from the Tories. So I think a next general election would be a Labour Lib coalition. I think that's very much that seems to be the way we're going. But again, it will have to be compromised. And I would hope that even the left in that position would want to get a load of progressive stuff and policies done that will really help the UK. The Green New Deal, I hope they get that through. The decarbonisation of the steel industry, again, being heavily pushed by Ed Miliband, something which would massively help the UK economically and secure hundreds of thousands of jobs in the steel industry in the future. Again, massively helping the North, massively helping Wales, where our steel industries are. And of course, all the tertiary industries around them that support those things. There's so much we can be doing and campaigning and stuff like that. And and Phil seems to be engaged in some serious doomerism of, well, it's just a binary choice. And I really do worry with the size of Phil's audience that he has that are overwhelmingly from the UK, who could just turn off and just say, well, it's an illusion of choice. Why should I go and bother to vote? That's my worry. That really is my worry. So hopefully, Phil, you know, you won't engage in so much doomerism. And you know, if you're ever up for a talk or a chat, I'm more than happy to come on to come on your channel, whatever, and we'll have a good old have a good old chin wag, like I say, with two Yorkshiremen. Like I say, when two Yorkshiremen get together, we put the world to rights. So um so I'm more than happy to do that. But again, there's so much stuff we could be doing, involving in campaignings, crafting good messaging, getting it out to the public, to get them to sort of realize that it's the Conservatives that are the problem and we need to boot them out. Because again, there are lots of really strong areas where the Tories are losing massive support from rural areas, which we need to take huge advantage of, certainly in those areas. But again, I've been talking for an hour now. So I'm worn out. I'm tuckered out. Right. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Like I say, please do hit that like and share button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. I will see you all next time.